This is the Fantasy Football Fellowship Podcast. We had some technical difficulties, but we are back. We were rolling. A little refresh. That's all you need. It's kind of sometimes that's true in life as well. You just need a little refresh, and you're back at it. So, we're just breaking down training camps and some of the news and injuries that have already been taking place this time of year, and it can be hard to navigate. But again, names that pop up all the time, those are the ones you got to avoid. You really do. When you're at the draft and you're debating between two different players, the one that he keeps popping up on injuries, that's the guy to I know it's obvious, but it's like you got to move on from those guys. So be on alert for that. So let's jump into this week's breakout topic. And I want to look at this concept of forcing it. When we're on the clock as fantasy managers, we are often tempted to force ourselves to draft a certain player or a certain position based on what's happening in the draft. And what happens, I think, most commonly is when the other teams in our league go on a run, a positional run, where all of a sudden we saw 3-4 quarterbacks go in a row or 3-4 tight ends go in a row. And what do? We panic and we go, if I don't get a tight end now, I'm not going to get one. Or if I don't get a quarterback now, I'm not going to get one. And then we force ourselves to just take a guy. And oftentimes that's not the wise decision. Now, sometimes it can be, but you have to be able to recognize tiers and value and trust that if you just wait an extra round, you could actually snag a running back and get the quarterback that you are thinking about taking. Because you have to realize, if those other managers took quarterbacks, they're not going to get them again. They're not going to get another one most likely. And that guy's going to still be there, or someone of equal value in a round or two. And so I think we, in the middle of a draft, we just start forcing ourselves like, oh no, I got to take a tight end right now. It's like, no. The better pick is a wide receiver that you're staring at. And you're like, dude, this guy's awesome. I'm going to take him. Well, I'm not going to get him because I'm going to have to force myself. So how do you navigate that when you see runs happen and
I want to be the person who starts a run as opposed to following them. Now, you do have to pay attention to it, because occasionally it's the case that your team is in a situation where I have to get my second running back here in this round. And I hate the running backs that I'm seeing for the next 20 picks if I don't take this guy. I don't feel great about that pick, but I need a running back. That happens sometimes, but you feel like it's happening more often than it actually does. So I want to be the person who is starting runs by maybe taking two wide receivers in a row and everyone else has been going running back or something like that. And if you are in your draft, if you're constantly responding to the sort of unexpected positional run that has happened right before your pick, you're not going to like your team at the end of your draft. To be in that situation where you're always reacting instead of following your plan is a bad place to be. So it's something to calm yourself down a little bit and stick to your plan when you're drafting.
Yes. And with that, a caveat, we do need to be adaptable at times.
Right. You got to pay attention to what's happening.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's not that you're never adaptable, but you just don't want to feel forced or pressured into doing something that's not the right fantasy move. And I think this happens a couple other scenarios as well. So this is kind of an overall topic about forcing it. But sometimes we force ourselves to reach for a player. And again, sometimes it's worth it, but oftentimes it's not. We don't have to reach to get the guy we really want. Let him fall to you. Let him go in the round that he's supposed to go in. Now, you could give yourself permission to maybe reach for one guy every draft, and fine, that's fine. But to spend your draft reaching for just the guys that you want, you have to be careful with that, because all of a sudden you're missing out on really having a strong full roster and building out a team that can last all the way to a championship. The other thing you can feel forced or pressured to do is you're looking at your rankings, and maybe you're factoring in, you're looking at Fantasy Pros or ESPN or wherever you look, football guys, footballers, wherever you're looking, right? You got your list of rankings. And all of a sudden you're sitting at, maybe the 6th round, and Joe Mixon has fallen. And you're like, oh, Joe Mixon is the 25th ranked running back or whatever he is these days. Every day changes with Mixon because but that's an example where I saw him in my draft a couple weeks ago. He just fell. He fell and fell and fell. And sometimes you go, wow, look at the value. This guy fell. But for the most part, there's a reason that he falls. And there's a reason you just don't want him on your roster. So don't feel obligated and force yourself to take a guy you don't really want on your team just because you feel like, well, he's high on my rankings, and so I better take him. Don't do it. You don't have to force it.
Yeah.
Is that fair? Do you agree with that?
I think that is fair. What's tricky about it is when you do these drafts where there's the 1 minute timer, and that guy has been falling and falling and falling. And then you're sitting there and you're like, okay, what is the latest news on Joe Mixon? Like, what are they saying about his foot this week?
Yep.
You get in a tough situation where there's 15 seconds left and you don't have the time to read the little news update next to his name. And then you're like, well, maybe now is the time to take him. So you want to know who those guys that are gonna slide are before the draft starts, if at all possible. And if you see a name that starts ticking down, and you're like, everybody else in my league knows something that I don't, you should be hesitant to draft that player. I mean, every once in a while you might get a value, but often it's a trap. Yeah, don't get trapped.
Because there's nothing worse when you look at your roster and you go, oh, why did I take that guy? Oh, I can't believe this guy's on my team.
Right.
And you immediately regret it. And you don't want it because you forced yourself to do it. Don't do it. So don't force it. And so this plays out in a number of ways. And so whether it's reaching, whether it's guys that are slipping, or whether it's positionally, you feel pressure. And so with that, from a fantasy perspective, when do you give your permission to reach for a player, and who is that player this year for you that you've identified? You're like, you know what? I'm willing to go up around and get that guy.
I mean, again, the only position that I'm extremely worried about if I don't have like 2 or 3 of them by the middle of my draft is running back. I think that you can make up deficits at pretty much every other position except for running back in a draft. And so, I mean, I have found myself, I am willing to reach for Chuba Hubbard. Just mentioned him a few minutes ago. I mean, I think if I see, okay, I'm getting towards the end of the running backs that I'm willing to take here, and he's still a little bit further down, I'm willing to take him around early to lock him down at like worst case scenario as my running back 2. Like I feel really good with Chuba Hubbard as my running back 2. He's a guy that I've reached for in some mock drafts. And then for me, I just think that the disrespect that is Jackson Smith and Jigba, JSN, has been enduring to me. It just doesn't make sense. When I look at like expert rankings for him, and they've got him somewhere around wide receiver 12, and I feel like I've seen him slip down to like the mid 20s in some of these like best ball drafts that I've done. I think that he's a guy that I'm probably going to be reaching for in like, maybe if I'm in a late second round situation and he's still there. JSN is a guy I would love to have as my second wide receiver, and maybe would be comfortable with him as my first wide receiver.
I'm buying the narrative that Seattle is going to run the ball. And so I drafted Zach Charbonnet. Kenneth Walker is one of those names I mentioned earlier. Mm-hmm. He's always injured. Charbonnet is the guy you want. But no, JSN was awesome last year. One player that I am willing to reach for is Jordan Mason, running back with the Vikings. Now he is getting a lot of steam. The hype is building. He is rising draft boards. And so I know that I'm not alone in thinking that he's going to have a great year and maybe even pass Aaron Jones as the go-to guy as the season goes on. And so in order for me to get him, I'm going to have to reach for him. And so in that situation, I'm so convinced that I'm willing to do that.
Yeah.
But for a lot of these guys, like I want Jacoby Myers to fall to me. I want Charbonnet to fall to me. I want Tyrone Tracy to fall to me and just take them kind of where they're supposed to go. And so as we think about this topic of, hey man, don't force it. Don't force it. How often in life do we force things to happen where we feel pressure, we feel obligated, we want something so badly that we force it and we settle. Now, this can play out when it comes to jobs, desiring a spouse, buying a house, different scenarios that pop up where we don't like to be patient. We don't like to wait. We don't like to be forced to trust. We just want to act and we want it to happen now. And sometimes it's the first job that comes across and that's the one we take. And versus, wait. Is this really the job that God has led me to and the door that he has opened up and that I can feel, true peace about. And like last week, we talked about discernment. And so this is a challenge, I think, for all of us to where, man, I really want this to happen. So I'm going to bang down the door. I'm going to force it. Now, there's a lesson to talk about perseverance and persistence, and absolutely. But sometimes we just take it too far where it's like, I'm going to force it. I'm going to just make it happen. I'm going to make it happen. It's like, no, it's not supposed to happen. It's not what's best. It's not God's best in this situation. The door is clearly closing. Let it close. You don't have to feel the pressure that, oh, if I don't do it by this time, it's not going to happen. Wait it out. Trust God and be patient. And so there is, like we talked about last week, there is a discernment to this, and there is a, walking with the Spirit as followers of Jesus to know what's best and how God is leading us. But just the encouragement for us today is, don't force it, man. Don't force it. And so I got to hear it myself, because I'm that way sometimes where I'm going to go get it. I'm going to make it happen. And no, it's not happening yet. And that's okay. Be patient. How does this land for you?
Well, I love that you just used the word patient multiple times there. I mean, that is just so, in our fantasy drafts, we want to be appropriately patient. And in life, patience is such an important virtue, but I think you'd be hard pressed to find a word that is less popular in the sort of frenetic, sort of chaotic, fast-paced world that we live in. Where there's always sort of this ideal of like, here is what the sort of successful, ambitious, fast-paced life looks like in the context that I'm living in, for people that are in the season of life that I'm in. And to say, you know what? I'm going to be patient. I'm going to slow down. I'm going to trust the Lord to lead me in the way that He wants me to go. And that involves having some breathing room in my life, some margin in my spiritual life to listen to Him. So yeah, that the patience is the other side of that sort of forced, frenetic lifestyle, posture of heart that we're talking about. And I think it's a virtue that I need to think more about than I do a lot of the time. Yeah.
Yeah, and just like evaluating, am I making the decision from a place of panic and a sense of rushing, or is it truly, calculated, prayerful, getting wise counsel? Like, those are the kind of decisions we want to make. Now, sometimes it's so obvious, and just like in our draft, it's like, oh, this guy's available. Click yes, and there are clear choices where it's like, oh, should I tell this person about Jesus? Yeah. The answer is yes. Just tell them about Jesus. Do I need to love this person? Yeah, just love the person. But there are decisions that we just don't need to force and rush, and we do it from a place of feeling pressure or feeling obligated, and that's not really the right way to make decisions. It's not the best way.
That's exactly right, man. I mean, a word that I think is just it's a key word. Pay attention to how you and the people that you love use this word. And it's the word should. Okay, we're always. I think it's a word we use all the time when we have an idea of the way that things should be, the things that we should do, the places that we should have gotten to by now in our life, the way that God should treat us, the way that others should treat us. And it's not that those sort of expectations and desires are inherently wrong, but it's good to ask the question: okay, who told me that this is the way that things should be? Where did I get this notion that I should be at this point? I think that the way that we use the word should is often sort of a little blinking light on the dashboard that's an indicator to the shame that's going on below the surface. Not always, okay? There is a healthy sense of obligation and duty that we should feel in our lives as followers of Jesus. But a lot of times that word should is a word that we need to unpack with God and with others, because it indicates this sort of like, there's something deficient about me, something deficient about my life. And I just think that when God, our Father, looks at us in and through Jesus, he never looks at us and says, man, Trip should have made it further by now. Man, Bryce should be better than this by now. I think that He looks at us with extreme patience and compassion. He doesn't see us with any deficiency or shame, and He's leading us gently and kindly in the path that He wants us to walk in. And a lot of times the way that we recognize that path is by not forcing it, by not being sort of shaken up by the chaos, or what's the verse that says not being tossed back and forth by the wind of every sort of doctrine and opinion, slowing down and trusting him. So that's my practical advice. More and more I'm thinking about when I use that word should, where's that coming from? Is it rising out of a healthy sense of faithfulness and obligation to the Lord? And that's an important part of our lives as followers of Jesus. But often for me, it's rising out of a place of shame or felt deficiency. And I want to go back to Jesus and say, you don't see me that way, Jesus. And so help me to operate out of the way that you see me.
Amen. So good. And again, this parallel, when we're drafting our fantasy team, we want to make picks where we can feel like confident and yes, great pick. Boom. This is the guy. This is the guy. When we start thinking, oh, I should draft a tight end. I really
should do this here.
I really should draft a tight end. Oh, I really should take Joe Mixon here. No, you shouldn't. No, you should.
Yeah.
and so I think it's great. I think that parallels exactly what you're saying.
It's a great
really
corollary. For whose playbook are you running by when you're in that situation in the draft? This sense of like should versus kind of the team that's presenting itself right in front of me. And whose playbook are you kind of running in your own life when you say, man, I really should be this way by now. I should have, shame, should have already mastered everything, right? It's like, no, Jesus, he knows that you are in process and you're on a journey with him. And that's a great place to be when you can be patient and abide in his love.
Absolutely. And it plays out, I think in marriage and parenthood too, because it's like, oh, I should be married by now. I should have kids by now. And then all of a sudden we feel this pressure. We're trying to force it. And, walking with people, and I experienced it myself, where you're delayed in having kids, and there's a lot that goes in that. And so are we going to trust and be patient and trust the one who's in control, who's the source of life? Or we're going to try to force it and do whatever. And we get all worked up and it doesn't go very well in that. And when that becomes the mentality, and the approach. And same with marriage, like, oh, I should be married. No one's going to settle. It's like, wait, is this person really the best situation? Or maybe you're trying to convince yourself, I should get married. All right, fine. And people will step into that. It's very sad. And then those, marriages have a tough time. Whereas, no, I'm excited to get married. I'm excited. It's the right time, and I'm trusting God, and so we can do that in all of our situations.
I mean, I love the parenting connection there, because I think so. This is something that Jesus said. I'm an imperfect father. And so there are times, man, it especially seems to be in the late afternoon, early evening, the witching hour at my house, when I look at my boys and I get frustrated. And I say, you shouldn't be acting that way. You shouldn't be. And in my head, in my sort of as a sinful father, I'll say, you shouldn't be that way, right? But when I really look at my boys and think about how I love them, it's like, no, I delight in the person that you are, and I don't want to apply a shameful should to anything about your life. I want to help you to grow into the man that God is calling you to be, but I don't want that to be dictated by shame. And just like Jesus said, if you, a sinful parent, feel that way about your kids at your best moments, how much more your Father, who loves you perfectly, who never looks at you with any sense of sort of shame or rejection, but is helping you grow into the man, the person that he wants you to be. I mean, the parenting corollary is so important there for me.
Well, we could go further into that, but just simply put, even trying to force our kids to do things versus training them to willingly do things.
Yeah.
Even actually, I'll shout out to my daughter, Maddie, last night. Before we went down to the basement to play with Daddy, my wife said, hey, make sure whatever you guys do down there, just clean up after. And right when we were about to go back up, there Maddie was cleaning up. I didn't have to ask her again. I didn't have to force her to clean up. She just willingly did it. She listened to her mom from earlier that night. And so there you go. And so are we operating that way too? Back to your point about, I should do this as a follower of Jesus versus willingly doing it. And so, we've taken this topic a couple different directions, but there's a lot in here. So
in so many different ways. Yeah, it really does.
Lands. But I did want to share a couple verses, and then we'll wrap things up here. But in regards to, situations that we find ourselves in, and instead of forcing it, really relying on, trusting God and wisdom and patience, and trusting in God's timing and fit. I look at Psalm 37, 3-5. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and befriend faithfulness. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in him, and he will act. And so as we delight in him, our desires align with him. And it's amazing how, then the things we start wanting are what he wants. And then the doors start opening up and we have the peace and things make sense. And we're just on the same page with the Lord. And so again, last week, like we talked about discernment, tonight or today, talking about delighting ourselves in the Lord, I think is a key part of this. And then also in the Old Testament, Micah 7:7, he says, but as for me, I will look expectantly for the Lord, and with confidence in him, I will keep watch. I will wait with confident expectation for the God of my salvation. My God will hear me. And so is that the posture that we have, that we choose patience and choose trusting God to provide and guide, and our confidence is in him. And so I hope that that's encouraging for all of us today, that we don't have to feel forced to draft a quarterback just because everybody else says we have to do it. Right? Let's do what the Lord says and trust him when we have to wait sometimes. Because that better quarterback's going to be there 2 rounds later. So, and sometimes we have to wait on that quarterback.
Yep.
And speaking of quarterbacks, so that's
the perfect transition.
There it is. That's this week's breakout. Again, we'll do breakouts all season long here on the podcast, but also in written form, starting the first week of September. And those are designed for your leagues to discuss at league meetings. So what a cool conversation Trip and I just had, went a bunch of different directions. You could do that in your fantasy league and imagine 12 different guys having different perspectives on the topic of, of forcing things to happen in life. And man, you can learn from one another and dive into scripture together. So go to fantasyfootballfellowship.com, sign up for the free content, and you can enjoy that all season long. But I want to talk about quarterbacks today. And those of you listening and watching right now, you can jump on and give me your thoughts on what quarterbacks you're targeting. What rounds do you prefer to draft your quarterback? Because really, there are 2 camps mainly. You go target a quarterback early and you get one of the top 5 guys, or you punt and you wait for a quarterback later on. And those seem to be the most dominant. Every once in a while, you get the guys that I'll take a guy, kind of the 8th best quarterback, and you take him in the middle rounds. But I lean toward waiting on a quarterback. And I want to get the guy that's going to take the next step. So I want to get the guy before he takes the big step. So before Jalen Hurts becomes Jalen Hurts, I want him on my team. Now that he is Jalen Hurts, I got to pay a premium for him. I'd rather take quarterback or running backs and wide receivers in rounds 1 through 6. That's just my personal strategy, because I don't always find there's this huge gap between quarterbacks. I always find that if I can I'm good with the 14th best quarterback at worst, if that's the case. But if he ends up taking a step further and he becomes a lot better, now all of a sudden I drafted the 14th ranked quarterback, and now I have the 7th best quarterback, and I'm loving life and I'm loving the value there. So that is my belief. That's kind of the way that I've operated. Jared Goff took me pretty far last year. So I had a nice run with Jared Goff as kind of utilizing that strategy. This year, I'm leaning in on Drake May, CJ Stroud. Bo Nix probably doesn't fall, but if he happened to, I love Bo Nix. That's kind of the tier. Dak Prescott, in some ways, is overlooked. So what about for you? Who are the quarterbacks and the strategy you're implementing this season?
Yeah, I mean, I just, I look at the sort of ADP here, and it's like there are 19 quarterbacks, I think, that I'm willing to have as my starter right now. Some of those lower guys, I would prefer to have someone a little bit better, but it's just like, there's a little bit of a psychological phenomenon with quarterbacks where, because it's the exciting position that touches the ball every play, every offensive play of the game. The quarterback was the cool guy in high school, and they're the stars that we love to think of. Somebody in your league is almost certainly going to get excited when they see Josh Allen kind of creeping through the queue, and they're going to take him earlier than I'm willing to. So there's just no chance that Josh Allen is going to slip 6 picks or a round down. It's not going to happen with Lamar Jackson. If that does happen, I'm willing to take those top tier guys, right? Like if I see Lamar Jackson slip around further than I think that he should, right? Or see Patrick Mahomes slip 2 or 3 rounds, which I have seen occasionally in some of these mock drafts and best ball drafts that I'm doing, then I'm willing to take them. But it's really, I want somebody like Dak Prescott, QB 12 in ADP. I feel good about Justin Herbert this year. I love your Drake May call. Herbert. CJ Stroud is going as the quarterback 19.
I don't understand.
I just don't get that. I'm willing to roll with Trevor Lawrence with the caveat that I would like to have like a viable sort of QB2 on my bench at the start of the season. So generally, I'm not carrying 2 or 3 quarterbacks unless I have a really deep bench throughout the season. If I'm taking one of those later guys, I probably want to have 2 of those later guys to see how things play out the first few games of the season. And the last little note that I'll throw in here right now, and this is, again, don't take this guy as your QB1. Okay. But Anthony Richardson, I think okay, I'm sorry, man.
Here we go.
He's going to win the starting job. He's going to win the starting job with the Indianapolis Colts. I know it has been a frustrating experience. I don't want him as my quarterback 1. He's going as the quarterback 30 right now in ADP. And I just think if you take, let's say, CJ Stroud, all right? You take CJ Stroud, you're like, this is a guy that I feel confident about his floor. I can start him at quarterback. And then you take Anthony Richardson as your QB2. I really think that there is league-winning upside there, okay? And if he doesn't win the starting job, you just drop him right away and you pick somebody up on waivers. You're going to know that before the season starts. I think that he's going to win the starting job. And even if he stinks, and even if the Colts are going to be bad this year, okay? But he still, if he's healthy, is going to win you weeks with his legs alone, So that's just my little, what I would do right now is take one of those quarterbacks 12 through 16 that I feel pretty good about as having as my starter this year. I'm probably going to be the last person to draft a quarterback in my league. And then I'm going to take Anthony Richardson with a late pick in my draft. And let's just see what happens here. Okay. And I think this is one of these guys, maybe I should have mentioned him as a training camp riser for me early. I think that what I'm hearing out of training camp is that he's healthy and that he looks like his passing is under control. Okay. It's not good.
He's got some weapons. Right? I mean, they have some receivers.
Yeah. Their receiving core is pretty good. They have Tyler Warren as their tight end now.
A lot of hype for Warren.
And he can run for 70 yards and a touchdown in a game, So again, I do not take, under no circumstances should you have Anthony Richardson as your quarterback 1. That's not what I'm saying at all. But as a late round sort of flyer that I want to keep on my bench for the first couple of weeks of the season and just see what happens. Again, he's a total afterthought. And it's possible that Daniel Jones wins that job, but I don't think that is going to be the case.
Okay, that's an interesting take. That's Trip, by the way.
That's not Bryce. Bryce is not signed on for this
with Trip. And I like the Colts. I root for the Colts, but I'm not so certain on that. But I think a good practice to do, or an event. I can't think of the term, but for an exercise for you to do as fantasy managers is to look at your list of quarterbacks and go like this. Okay, Baker Mayfield is the 7th quarterback off the board. Is he going to be better than QB7? No way.
Right.
No way.
Right.
So you're drafting him at best case scenario, he's QB7. And so I don't want to do that. And then I'm looking at Brock Purdy, QB10. That's best case scenario. I don't see him any higher than QB10. Now Justin Fields, QB11. Now I'm starting to think, okay, yeah, I think he could be better than Purdy and Kyler Murray. So, okay, cool. I like the value there. Jared Goff, QB12. I don't think he's going to be better than QB12. So I'm probably going to pass on Goff. Dak Prescott, QB13. I absolutely think he could be QB8. I think there's a chance for that. Caleb Williams, QB14. We got to see how the next couple of weeks go with training camp with the Bears, because so far it's not the hype hasn't been great. Justin Herbert, QB15. Oh yeah, this guy could be a top 10 quarterback, no doubt. Like with Harbaugh, and I love Hampton. This whole offense is going to be better. He's got weapons. They've added a couple other guys. Maybe they'll throw Keenan Allen back in the mix. They added Tyler Conklin at tight end. So yeah, Herbert, QB15. I'm loving life, getting him late in draft. Jordan Love, QB16. Of course. Drake May, QB17. So again, I'm willing to wait. I love any of these guys. We're talking Trevor Lawrence, QB20. Could he be a top 14 guy? Yeah, there's a world. We're drafting Brian Thomas in the first round. So why couldn't Trevor Lawrence put up those kind of numbers? Yeah. So hopefully that's convincing. I
think that's a great way. Yeah, that's a great way to think about who am I comfortable taking, who could exceed their draft expectations. And those names you just named are great.
Because that's where you're getting the value. And that's the difference in fantasy is you get an edge here or there. And I think there's an opportunity to get an edge at quarterback. So if you take Josh Allen number 1, you're expecting him to be QB, or not number 1, but in the second round as QB1. he has to be QB1.
Right.
But you draft, Justin Fields at QB 11, fine. Worst case scenario is QB 11. Well, I guess worst case scenario is worse than that, but you understand kind of the process there.
As long as he's starting, I think that's his floor.
He's shown that enough. So anyway, so I would love to know your thoughts. You can leave your comments here. We'd love to know your approach on QBs. So there you go. There's our strategy. So I'll keep you posted as we actually draft quarterbacks over the next few weeks. As we wrap up today, we've only got a minute left or so. Give me a sleeper right now. Give me somebody that people are sleeping on. They're not talking about enough. They're not thinking about enough. Who do we need to know, Trip?
This might be another one that you make fun of me for. Okay. But I've been thinking a lot about this guy recently. This is a deep league sleeper. Okay. So this is like last pick in a 12-team league, last pick in a 14-team league, or just a guy to pay attention to on your waiver wire. But there is a running back in Washington. His name is Jackery Krosky Merritt. Okay. You
get a lot of names. Look, I avoid the multiple names.
He has a lot of names. One of my favorite facts about him that I just found out this week is that he goes by Bill. Okay. So don't know. His name's Jackery Krosky Merritt, but he goes by Bill. Okay. And he was a guy who he had an eligibility issue his senior year. He played one game and then it came out that they had mishandled his college eligibility. And so he wasn't allowed to play any of the rest of the season. He continued to practice with the team, stay in good shape. He's behind Brian Robinson Jr. and Austin Eckler, who turned 65 this season. So, and he's one of these guys who's getting a lot of training camp hype. He would have been drafted much, much higher than he was drafted if he had played his entire last year of college. And it wasn't because of any injury or any behavioral issue on his part. It was because of an eligibility thing that his school and his team mishandled. I think that Austin Eckler is not going to stay healthy all season. And I think that Brian Robinson Jr. is just, he's a player that I don't think the Commanders are that excited about. And he's on his last year of his rookie contract. So I think if either one of them gets hurt, this is a guy that's going to be a priority waiver ad. And he has the athletic profile to be a starting NFL running back. Okay. So again, deep league, but this is a sleeper that is a deep league sleeper for me. I think I'm going to take him as kind of a last pick in a few leagues, or just keep an eye on him on my waiver wire. But if Eckler or Robinson gets hurt, he will be a name that you'll start to hear in a priority ad, and it'll be too late for you to sort of add him at sort of a cheap cost. So Jackery Krosky Merritt.
Okay.
Sleeper for me.
No, it's a good take.
I'm inclined to give wide receivers in these segments, and I'm steering away from wide receiver this year. And I'm saying just a name to keep an eye on, just a guy to click the little star button in your league if you're on ESPN or Sleeper, just to put him on your watch list.
So I'm usually the under the radar running back guy. And I told you last week I drafted Brashard Smith out of Kansas City, and then also Kyle Managai. I still can't figure out his name, but he's getting some buzz. He's getting some buzz out of Chicago. So both of those guys are good sleepers that I roster and feel good about. One guy though that I am monitoring that I believe is a sleeper that I'm very intrigued by is tight end Mason Taylor for the New York Jets. So right now he's listed as the backup tight end. He's also a little banged up. So there's some concern there. But when you look at the Jets receiving core, they came out with their depth chart. So Garrett Wilson, of course, I would target Garrett Wilson. Now that Fields is fine, go get Garrett Wilson. Josh Reynolds and Allen Lazard are the 2 and 3 wide receivers. Yeah, but these are nice veteran guys. That is your 4th or 5th guy. But these could be potential starters. Are you kidding me? So anyway, they're gonna have to throw their tight end. Yeah, and they're gonna have to throw out of the backfield. So you want Braylon Allen, the running back, who's a sleeper, a little bit of a sleeper, a lot of buzz for him too. But Braylon Allen, the running back out of the Jets, and then Mason Taylor, his dad, Miami Dolphin great Jason Taylor.
Right.
Yes, please. Sign me up. That's an athletic specimen. Jason Taylor. Are you kidding me? So this is his son, tight end out of LSU. So I'm intrigued by him as a backup tight end with some upside as the season goes along, because there is opportunity with the Jets. So
can I just ask you, what do you think about Jason Taylor naming his son Mason Taylor?
Oh, I didn't think about that.
How do you feel about that? Does that play into your consideration at all?
It's a little
I think
goofy.
I'm a little uncomfortable with it.
It's a little goofy.
But other than that, I like that take. I like your Braylon Allen take and your Mason Taylor take there. Those are 2 good sleepers.
Yeah. So, all right. So I appreciate the comments. There was a question about 2 QB leagues. And so if you're starting 2 QBs, I'm not an expert at that. I don't play 2 QB leagues. I don't play super flex leagues.
I think if you're in a 2 QB league,
That's a different strategy.
You need to draft a quarterback in the first 2 rounds and preferably in the first round, because there really can be a run on quarterback where all of a sudden you're talking about Bryce Young as your starting quarterback in a 2 QB league because you waited, and you're going to be like, man, but look, I've got Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson on my team, but your second quarterback just stinks. And in general, what you can count on for points with quarterbacks is a little bit more reliable week to week than what you can count on with running backs and wide receivers. So you need to take a quarterback early in a 2 QB league.
Yeah, I don't have enough experience. I like to play in 14 team leagues, 14 managers. And so the idea of having 2 quarterbacks in those leagues,
right, it's like, couldn't even imagine it. Yeah.
No way. So anyway, just a preference, but I'm sure those
leagues are fun, but they're hard. Fun. They're hard. And you've got to get your first quarterback squared away early on.
Yeah, that makes sense. So there you go. That's this week's Fantasy Football Fellowship podcast. Great stuff. Out of Trip. Appreciate you, man. Have a great week. And we'll try to continue to keep up with all the training camp news and notes and injuries, and football's coming. We get preseason action this weekend. So we'll take a look at that and react and respond next Tuesday. And so we will talk to you then. For Trip, I'm Bryce. I'm a sports fan and a fantasy manager who follows Jesus. I believe in the good news that he died on the cross for my sin. He was resurrected, and through faith, I've been saved by his grace. I hope that is true for you as well, and I hope you'll join me as we live life as fantasy managers who follow Jesus together. Have a great rest of your day. Be sure to sign up for Fantasy Football Fellowship at fantasyfootballfellowship.com, and we will talk to you next week right here on the Fantasy Football Fellowship podcast. Also, shout out to Fantasy Football Commissioners. I've got my Fantasy Football Commish shirt on today. Respect the commissioner. Respect the commissioner. Have a great one. We'll see you.